Remember, we adopted local governments that were apartheid, which basically means they were only catering for a certain population, white. With the new democracy, local government has to cater for everyone. So we've been transforming. We used to have about 1,200 municipalities. We now have about 278. So we've rationalized them and they've given them pieces of legislation, new instruments for them to be able to function. And what this installation is about, it reflects on what has happened in the last 15 years. We're looking backwards, we're using insight, but we're also using a lot of foresight to think about what do we want in the future. And that future for us is the African Union's Vision 2063.
We have been cooperating with the city of Dakar and the city of Johannesburg, identifying areas of mutual interest and mutual implementation. And it is platforms like this that enable us to develop bilateral relations between cities, but also at a multilateral level, being able to work through the systems that we have of organized local government to take forward, implementing the programs that affect our peoples in the cities.
From the side of the South African government, as Pax has highlighted, I think the barometer of the success of the summit here in Johannesburg is the extent to which the delegates would have internalized and have come up with concrete program of action of how to implement Agenda 2063, the Africa that we want, with a particular reference to bringing hope to young people of this African continent. As we know, there are two major trends that we see in Africa today. We are rapidly urbanizing, meaning that the majority of Africa's people are moving increasingly into the urban areas. The second trend is that we are increasingly becoming a youthful Africa, which means the hopes of young people lies in this conference, because local government plays such a crucial role of how people experience government. People don't experience government at a national or continental level. If you get into your home, you open the tap, no water flows. You try to switch on electricity, there's no light. There are potholes on the street. The robots are not working. Those are all responsibilities that fall within the competence of local government. So local government is like the beat of how government operates.
Agenda 2063. Let me remind you that as a departure from the OAU, the African Union is a people-centered union. And in all our activities, even before we set the Agenda 2063 out, we try to put the people at the center. So when the Agenda 2063, the vision of the Africa we want, was set out, consultations were held at all levels. The civil society, the African people, the African leaders, men, women, students, the academia. We made sure that all categories of people were involved and consulted, and this process went on for almost 2 years before our heads of state and government adopted the agenda. Now, what we are currently doing is we are breaking this 50-year development agenda into 10-year segments so that they become more implementable. And in doing this, we are also reaching out again to the African peoples. We have what we call the flagship projects. We have identified them and we are working on them. For example, an African passport. We'd want to ensure that through an African passport, all Africans can move freely to every African continent without going through a visa requirement. Like currently, Rwanda has started, Mauritius has followed suit, and we're encouraging all African countries to open their doors to the African people. We also have infrastructural projects that have to do with energy, road, and also air travel. This we are promoting to promote our unity and integration on our continent.
Johannesburg is a diverse and cosmopolitan city with a population of about 4.9 million people, 14% of whom are from sub-Saharan Africa. We pride ourselves as the melting pot of Africa and are indeed delighted to host this summit, which will strengthen Africa's local government through discourse and dialogue. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, local government is the indispensable vehicle through which our socio-political and development agenda is driven. In this regard, it is important to note that the year 2015 has been an important global year for local government.
Des idées forces qui en sont comme le fil d'Ariane qui relie les diverses parties de cet agenda, et je dirais deux mots du processus par lequel il a été produit, processus qui me paraît aussi important que le produit lui-même. Je dirais enfin comment, en tant que groupe de prospective, nous avons essayé de répondre à l'attente de ce sommet qui est de se focaliser sur le rôle des collectivités territoriales et des élus locaux pour l'atteinte des objectifs de l'agenda 2063. Après la présentation qui a été faite par Madame le commissaire aux affaires politiques de l'Union africaine, je crois que la nature de l'identité de l'agenda 2063 se précise.
The previous 6 Africities summits dealt with very important and pressing matters affecting development on the continent, including the financing of local government to fulfill its role effectively, building coalitions for achievement of common objectives, and unpacking the role of local government in connecting our people, the environment, development, and democracy to achieve sustainable development amongst other objectives. With those few words, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor on behalf of the President and the people of South Africa to declare this session of the Africities and the exhibition open, and wishing you fruitful deliberations during these coming days. We thank you. Karibu nyumbani wa Afrika Kusini.